me clearly. America is not a racist country.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last GOP debate, Tim Scott bust out his girlfriend. This is her. Now, I don't think anybody should be shocked that he has a pale woman on his arm. I kind of expected that. I just couldn't see a sister being with a man that says America is not a racist country. I can't see no sister standing next to a man like that. But hey, I mean, she looked okay. I mean, in my opinion, she looks a little mannish in the face, but that's my opinion. They're going to get upset with me for saying that because they think we should all look at them like they're perfect. So anyway, let's get into this story. Tim Scott tells Chicago Black church congregation to stop focusing on race. Woo, this dude is a trip for real. Republican presidential candidate U.S. Senator Tim Scott, South Carolina, speaks during a Florida Freedom Summit at the Gaylord Palms Resort on November 4th, 2023, in Kissimmee, Florida. He goes on to say that back in September, we reported the polls and were suggesting white Republican voters appreciate South Carolina Senator and presidential hopeful Tim Scott because he's a black person who downplays racism in America. That he does. Outright denies the existence of systemic racism. And he looks stupid doing that too. I saw a video where he admitted that he was getting pulled over by the police multiple times. So he was being racially profiled. Although that happened to him and he acknowledged that he knew he was being racially profiled, he still denies that racism is a serious issue. I mean, I just find that amazing. Candace Owens does pretty much the same thing, or they act like racism is not real unless it happens to one of them. Then it's real. Candace Owens usually play that game. So it seems as though Scott has understood his assignment for as long as he held public office, but especially since he became the only Black Republican presidential candidate. Wow. And you see how they didn't even acknowledge Larry Elder as being one of the candidates. They don't even acknowledge him. But see, those are the people that Larry Elder favors. They don't even acknowledge that he was a candidate. They only acknowledge one black man, and that's Tim Scott. In fact, it's almost as if his entire platform as a candidate has been centered around one thing: preaching to white people about how black people are lying about racism. Only he isn't really putting it on black people. Like many in the GOP, he's careful and he's crafty enough not to do too much in a way of being directly condescending to black people. Instead, he's making race relations in America out to be a purely political issue by laying it at the feet of Democrats and the left. No, racism is not owned by the Democrats and the left. Racism is owned by all. Both Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green Party, it don't matter. It exists in all of those different political fractions. So let's go on. There is a radical movement on the left and the more progressive that America makes on race, the more some leaders want to deny it. Tim Scott recently told a congregation during an unscheduled stop at New Beginnings Church, a black church in Chicago, according to ABC News. Our country has made, however, tremendous strides since then on the issue of race, but lawlessness and fatherlessness and joblessness have gotten worse in the last 60 years and not better. Well, some of those things are due to racism in the black community. So, Scott narrative mostly fell flat on his audience reportedly. There's a good reason for that. He was lying to the wrong people. See, what they should have done was grab Tim Scott and throw him ball head first out of that church. Not just head first, ball head first. Wow. Mm-mm-mm. Well, normally Tim Scott is always in front of a predominantly white audience. So he can give them that same old out of touch nonsense about discussion and focus on racism in America, beginning with Democrats and liberals. Yeah, he knows white Republicans really can't think outside of the red versus blue, right versus left political paradigm. But Black people know where the discussion on racism actually begins. It begins with Black people. So, our living rooms, our dining rooms, our cookouts, our barbecues, barbershops, and salons, our academics, our protests, our community, our churches. These are where systemic racism was discussed first. So we're the ones who did the work and forced the discussion to become national discussions. It wasn't that long ago when no Democrat holding office would even utter the word systemic racism, either because it would threaten them politically or because they were simply obtruse about race, as Republicans like Scott. They didn't talk about police brutality, and the very notion of reparations was as laughable to them as it was and still is to their Republican counterparts. Democrats, along with non Black members, left. Um, what they did was they just avoided systemic racism. And until it became mainstream. It's pretty mainstream now, you know. Of course, you always got the people denying it, but when the people denying it don't look like us, I really don't pay attention to nothing they say. I really don't, and you really shouldn't either. So it's much like the way white conservatives and liberals alike have adopted, appropriated, and changed the definition of the word woke. After Black people had been saying stay woke for literally generations. Yeah, but their definition of woke, y'all, they've been trying to corrupt it and it's not working. And the reason why it's not working when these folks out here keep using woke is because they can't define it. You can't tell somebody not to be a certain way and then you can't define it. Then it pretty much falls flat at that point. So Scott would know this if he was actually part of the Black collective instead of the GOP Sambo sock puppet who thinks welfare has been harder to survive for Black people than slavery. Now, how is that possible when the vast majority of the people on welfare are white? And that while racism isn't that serious, Republicans are being treated as second class citizens. Since when? Since when? Seriously, since when? Man, please, y'all stay away from us with that crap. So, anyway, what Tim Scott and those of his ilk are doing, they're trying to play on these emotions, push pins that most Black Americans don't see. It's not landing for them, and it never will. It never will. So, Tim Scott just makes it through reelection to the Senate is largely because he denies racism. As long as he keeps denying racism to his white South Carolina audience, he's going to always be reelected. And he knows this. And so that's what he does every single election cycle, denies racism, and then he gets reelected back into the Senate. So again, Scott, just like you saw in the beginning of this video, he says America is not a racist country. And, I don't think you can get in front of a Black church and say that. It just won't work. But, let's be real here, y'all. It ain't hardly none of the Black people in South Carolina are voting for this man. That's why he spends the vast majority of his time in front of a white audience because he knows who's going to vote for him. And he done been around these people long enough to know what they want to hear. But, yeah, he can win the Senate, but he certainly will never win the presidency. Tim Scott has no chance of being president at all. Y'all, please tell me what you think about this video. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.